Ex-prisoners of Reddit, what was the scariest thing you saw whilst on the inside? I spent a couple weeks in county jail. On the first day, when we were all being processed into the facility, strip, bend over, spread your cheeks, and cough. We were told very succinctly to never ever even joke about suicide while in the facility. Kinda like how you just don't say, bomb, on an airplane anymore. By day 3, I had a good understanding of the other guys I was locked up with. I was physically the biggest of the white guys in our pod. So all the white kids huddled around my table at meals to keep away from the Hispanic folks and the black folks. Yes, there are 3 teams in correctional facilities whether you like it or not. There was one kid in the group that seemed underdeveloped mentally. He probably had a learning disability among other things, but he essentially acted like a 12-year-old. I knew early on he was going to get himself in trouble because he never stopped talking or moving, and he was rubbing everyone the wrong way. I tried to tell him to chill out and be invisible, but he was not understanding what I was telling him. I had been there a week, when the 12-year-old finally lost his cool completely. He was in the shower, singing and joking around, putting on a performance that went too far, and he pooped on the floor as a joke. After the other guys in the shower grabbed their towels and ran, he proceeded to kick the poop all over the walls and into the other shower stalls. I didn't shower for the rest of my stay, truth be told. It turned into a big scene, and then when the trustees came in to clean up the poop all over the walls, it turned into an even bigger scene. The whole time, the 12-year-old was locked in a cell near the showers, laughing and joking as other inmates had to clean up his poop and make the shower area sanitary again. State-run facilities have standards after all. The next day, everyone was looking at the 12-year-old with hate in their eyes. Kinda like Gomer Pyle in Full Metal Jacket. Everyone missed their showers the day prior due to the poopsident, and then the kid was still up to his antics at breakfast the next day. Everyone got really cold toward him, even openly mean. I'll admit, I started ignoring him completely after the poop. It took him a day or 2 to realize he was hated by all, and then his personality changed dramatically. He became sad, despondent, and started talking to the COs because the other inmates wouldn't talk to him anymore. He fucked up, and told the COs that he should just harm himself and make everyone happy, and that was all it took. They dragged out the blue burrito. This is the scariest thing I had seen in jail. The blue burrito was a 10-foot-long blue foam mat, like you would use in gym class, with 2 12-foot-long red belts attached. They laid it out on the floor, forced the 12-year-old to lay on the mat, and then they rolled him up with his arms at his sides into the blue burrito. The 2 long red belts clipped together at the top and bottom of the burrito, keeping it all nice and tight. This was the suicide protocol at the jail. No counseling, no medical ward. You lose the ability to move. They put that poor bastard in the burrito around 8:00 p.m., dragged him into his cell and left him laying on the floor, wrapped up tight, until breakfast the next morning, around 8:00 a.m. The child molesters and gang members in protective custody get to eat breakfast first. Imagine being unable to move, barely able to breathe, with no end in sight for 12 hours on the floor of your 8x8 cell. My cell was up above his, and I heard him weeping and moaning in agony all night. He didn't say a word to anyone, or look anyone in the eye for that matter, for the rest of the time I was there. One night in the blue burrito broke him. Not me, but my husband was in prison as a young adult. He said that they had a way of checking your ego in the spot he was at. The toughest guys would come up to you on your first day and ask how many push-ups you could do. If you were smart, you would just sorta blow it off or laugh it off and move on. If you were a stupid show-off or had something to prove, you would claim a large number or talk yourself up. If you did that, then they would be all friendly and be like, oh? Let's see it. So the poor guy would do as many push-ups as they could. The tough guys would gas the new guy up, acting friendly, pushing him to do more. They acted impressed and joked around. Then as soon as the new guy had done as many push-ups as possible, they would jump him and beat him up. He would be helpless to resist because he had maxed himself out on push-ups. Afterwards, any guy with an ego was normally really quiet for the remainder of their stay. I did a couple years when I was young and dumb. The craziest shit I saw was actually in the county jail and not the state prison. The county jail was right on the Texas-Mexico border, so there were a lot of Hispanics. What was weird was the Hispanics born in America and the Mexicans from Mexico absolutely hated each other. I saw a Hispanic from Texas heat up a bowl of water until it was boiling in the microwave. We had microwaves in the tank, and he then proceeded to throw the boiling water on a Mexican from Mexico's face and then beat the ever-loving shit out of him. That dude's screams will haunt me forever. I also saw a guy take a blade from a small pencil sharpener, tie it to a toothbrush and then slice a guy's face from ear to ear while he was sleeping. The guy lived, but it looked like a fucking murder scene. Where I was, the guard towers were armed with a variety of less than lethal firearms. A fight started on the breezeway, main walkway between units. You hear the siren and you have about 10 seconds sit on your ass and cover your head, to protect from OC overspray. Else, the guards start shooting shotguns loaded with rubber balls at you. One of the guards hit one of the guys fighting directly in the sack with a rubber ball round. Turned the front of his jeans red by the time they got him up into the infirmary. Apparently lost a testicle due to rupture. Removed. Not a prisoner, but an ex-guard. I worked at a juvenile detention facility in New Mexico. The absolute scariest thing I ever saw was a young boy, 9 years old, booked in for murdering both of his parents. There was nothing there. I failed to call this thing even human. I looked into this child's eyes and felt more fear than I ever have to this day. This was no child, it was a monster. Pure evil, condensed and given human form. And #X200B. And to clarify, I have booked and looked after murder suspects before, it was nothing new. But this kid was different. Very different. He never broke any rules and always followed commands but never, ever spoke unless directly asked something. And then it was curt, short. Just to answer a question. He never cried, either. Which is highly unusual for a 9-year-old kid in jail. He was eventually tried and transferred to mental facility. But I'll never forget the kid's eyes. It haunts me to this day. A friend of mine did a short stint. From what he told me, he was supposed to get paperwork detailing his charges before he got to prison, but did not. This made the other prisoners suspicious as they believed he was a snitch, was trying to hide that fact from them, and they threatened to beat him. An old acquaintance of his was in there and assured my friend that he had nothing to worry about as they had been threatening him for months and nothing had happened. That night while my friend was making his bed, a few prisoners ran into his acquaintance's cell and beat him to within inches of his life. They were bouncing the guy's head off of the concrete to the point that my friend could hear it. My buddy says that's the moment that scared him straight. Not a prisoner, but a former correctional officer. Saw a dude detoxing from alcohol die. Responded to a maintenance worker stabbing another inmate in the head with a screwdriver. And was involved in containing a riot. Obligatory, not a prisoner but an ex-correctional officer. I once had to work overtime in a segregation unit. The first thing that happens upon entering this unit is we get a call that an inmate who was out on a medical trip was coming back in, and was to be placed into a suicide watch cell. This inmate had been taken to an outside hospital for cutting his arm from his wrist to his bicep. We placed him in the suicide watch cell and went to find a bed mat for him, which was hard cause he couldn't have one with a hole in it while being on suicide watch. He told me that if I didn't get him a bed mat in 5 minutes, he was going to start ripping stitches. I told him to wait, went to find a mat and it had apparently been 6 minutes, cause by the time I got back, he had torn off his bandages and ripped out every single stitch in his arm. The blood was all over the place, we could easily see the muscle and fat in his arm. He agreed to cuff up, and went on his merry way back to the outside hospital. I later found out he had only initially done it cause he wanted to get out of prison for a while. That fact alone messed me up. Prison officer here. If any of the ex-cons are reading this, they may get a laugh out of it. I was working in a high-security at-risk unit where we housed prisoners with suicidal tendencies. One prisoner in particular liked to fill his mouth with his piss and shit and spit it on you through the gaps in the doors. One day I forgot to walk wide of his cell and all of a sudden, bam! He hit the inside of the door with the palm of his hand. Fuck, it gave me a jolt, and I've been an officer for 13 years. When I turned towards his cell I yelled as loud as I could. He got a fright and swallowed pretty much all he had in his mouth. Within seconds, there was projectile vomiting from the prisoner. The fucked up part was that we had to clean the cell as the prisoner was taken to medical for OBS. Piss, shit, vomit. It was bad. It's a tough job sometimes. I was in jail once waiting to see a judge. They'd moved me to 3 different jails in 3 days for some reason. I wasn't a troublemaker and was only in for driving on a suspended license, but I am big and scary looking. Anyways, when they transferred me to court, I was handcuffed to someone serving life and he was Aryan Brotherhood. I'm Hispanic, but look completely white and have a shaved head. He told me blacks were greenlit and that I had to swing on sight. If I saw a black man within reach, I was required to fight him, or they would beat or kill me later. It was a scary, and luckily the COs were aware and kept everyone separate until the green light ended. I was taking a shower in a communal shower. This guy walks in and is immediately jumped by 4 dudes. One guy takes out the metal strip to a safety razor and proceeds to cut this dude's fucking ear off. Good times lol. Not me, but a teacher of mine told me a story of one of her students that spent a week in juvie. He wasn't there for more than 2 days when a gang of boys attacked him, sliced his back up with razors and raped him. No one knew until they came to release him, and his mom put a hand on his back only to hear him scream in pain because of all the cuts on his back. I spent a day in country jail, the same jail where a family member worked at for a while as a lieutenant. It was his retirement job, meaning easy work. When you get into country, they give you a wristband with your full name and a barcode on it. For that 20-something hours I did everything I could to try to hide my last name because it is very distinctive and the same as my family member. XCO here, sorry if I'm not the target audience. Scariest thing I saw while working in a maximum security prison was this simple-looking middle-aged man who seemed nice at first, but was obviously very much insane. I was doing my rounds and he wanted to talk, so I talked to him for a while not knowing what to expect. I was working in a bay that day, which is for housing general population, and C bay as the mentally ill population. This is important. I started talking to this guy and he introduced himself to me and I told him my name and he started telling me he was wrongly imprisoned as he did nothing wrong. I said, what do you mean? And he said he was arrested for something he didn't do and now he's here. He looked like a sad, lonely white man, but average in every way. He could very easily be a cashier at a tractor store or something similar. Anyway, he started talking about his sister and how he loves to fuck her and come inside her, and this is where things start to get uncomfortable for me. He then starts telling me more about his sister and how she is mean to him and is jealous of him and how she beats him sometimes and she's mad at him for not wanting to have a baby with her. I don't like talking to him, so I try to make an excuse to leave, but then the weirdest part of the conversation happens. He starts the conversation over completely from the beginning. He tells me his name and asks me mine, and I'm looking at him confused but tell him my name again anyway. He repeats the same story about his sister word for word, and yet again I try to leave, but he starts the conversation over again. He does this 3 more times before I just walk away and he's still talking. Later in the day it's shave time, so I have to go around and give razor blades to the inmates who want to shave their faces. Afterwards I go around again and collect the razors and I think I'm done, but I go back to the same man and I notice he is holding a razor in his hand. I told him he needs to give me the razor now as shaving time is over, and he said he can't because he's not finished yet. I told him he was done shaving his face and to please give me the razor, but he said he's done with his face but wasn't finished with the razor. He slid it through the bars and pulled back when I tried to take it from him. He was acting like a child with a toy and like I was a parent who wanted him to give me the toy. I held my hand open and demanded he give me the razor, and he kept saying, "No, I'm not finished yet." Keep in mind I was 19 at the time and he was 54, I think. I had about enough of his bullshit, so I very firmly said, "Give me the razor now or I will go get another officer over here." He looked upset and promised to give it back when he was done, and he wouldn't be long, he just had to get the chip and the dirt out. I said, "What are you talking about?" and he said he's innocent, and then I saw his arm where he was cutting into it. He said someone put a microchip in his arm and he has to get it out. He also said the chip was dirty and he had to get rid of the bad vein where the chip was. As fucked up as it was, I watched this man slice into his wrists, then put the dirty razor blade under a vein and pull it out of his arm. Imagine pulling up a guitar string about a foot into the air, but it was bloody. I stared at it, he stared at it, and then he let it fall back into his arm like it was nothing. He didn't seem to have any pain from it either, and his facial expression looked pleased. I had a mini freak out but kept my cool and went to get my other officer to come get him before he did any more damage. I waited there while 2 officers came and escorted him to C Bay, where he should have been from the beginning. As he was walking away, he started the conversation over again, and the last thing I heard him say before he rounded the corner was, "I fucked my sister." Some things they can't prepare you for in these places. My uncle spent time in and out of prison for most of my life. Not a bad guy, just makes terrible decisions. He told me once that his entire pod went into lockdown and the guy in his cell started to have epileptic seizures due to the stress. I guess this guy had a history of crying wolf and guards were in no rush to assist him. He ended up choking on his vomit and dying in the cell with my uncle watching. Guy laid on the floor for an entire night before anyone came in to check. If you've ever seen the HBO documentary, Gladiator Days, https www.youtube.com, watch, v equals sjzgxr0ogbu, https. www.youtube.com, watch, v equals sjzgxr0ogbu. I was just placed in general population in Gunnison, Central Utah Correctional Facility, in the same section that then had the riot. Later, when the killing took place, it was across the way from us. We could see the whole thing go down through the huge bulletproof glass windows they had between our section, Cedar 1, and the section the killing took place in, Cedar 3. The guards repeatedly ordered us to lock down in our cells, but no one listened. The whole place was on lockdown for several weeks. I saw the documentary almost by accident years later and it freaked me out. It was like being right back there again. Worst thing I ever experienced. There were other bad things, but this one takes the cake.